heads. Neither Monty nor I did more than smile and look away, and change the subject if any one hinted. We said, "You mustn't breathe such things to Mrs. East or Mrs. Jones, or they'll be angry." Apparently nobody ever did dare to breathe it to them. And I think Monty mentioned you too, Lord Ernest. She didn't want you to know. She was afraid you'd say that the whole thing was nonsense. I suppose it was Enid Biddle who came to you? She was afraid Mr. Snell, but it isn't worth talking about now, only she is a cat. Miss Biddle had said exactly the same of Mrs. Guest. Naturally, however, I did not mention the coincidence. "Now I've told you everything you wanted to know, haven't I?" Rachel went on. "Or were there any more questions you'd like to ask, I mean, about Bedr?" "Only one more, I think. Did it ever strike you that he was curious about you, or rather about Miss Gilder who, you both let him suppose, was really Miss Guest? Anything about your name?" "Why, yes, he was curious. They say Arabs always are, if you let them be. Not that he is exactly an Arab, but I suppose Armenians are the same. He seemed to want to know things about me, what I'd done, where I'd lived, and lots of little questions he would ask. Monty and I made up our minds from the first, as I told you, that there mustn't be any fibs. I simply put him off. He never got anything out of me at all." "I see," I said, and let myself drift away from her into thoughtfulness. "Is that all, then?" "Yes, that is all, thank you." Her tone sounded as if she were relieved of a mental weight, and would like to go. I expected her to make some excuse; it would soon be time to dress for dinner, or she had to write a letter. But no, she lingered. She was trying to bring herself to say something. I waited in silence, my eyes on the shining river, looking back at the golden trail of the sun that was like a rich mantle draping a gondola on a fête day in Venice. "I suppose you think," she forced the words out at last, "that Willis Bailey wouldn't have fallen in love, or proposed, if he hadn't thought like the rest, that I don't see why he shouldn't, Miss Guest. He really does seem to care for me, as I am, you know, and I've never told him a single untruth. I've nothing to blame myself for." "I'm sure of that. Yet you don't approve of me one bit. You think I'm a kind of adventuress. So does Mrs. Jones. Me! Why, what would the people at home in Salem say if any one suggested such a thing? You don't know the life I've led, Lord Ernest." "I can imagine. You don't want to go back to it again, do you?" "It does seem as if I couldn't now. It seemed so, even before Willis. Oh, I'm sure you think I never meant to go back, once I'd broken free from the dull grind." "No harm in that." "I'm glad you say so. It took all my legacy to see the world a little. Well, nearly all, not quite, perhaps, to tell the truth. And being brave has brought me this reward, the love of a man who can give me everything worth having. I shan't be outside life any more. And Willis won't have any reason to blame me when he no reason, of course," I fitted into her long pause. "But men as well as women are unreasonable sometimes, you know. And if he should be so wrong-headed as to think you'd deceived him about yourself, then he ought to blame Monty, not me. He ought, perhaps, but the question is, what he will do. And you can't like having a sword hanging over your head. Supposing he should be unjust, and refuse to carry out Oh, Lord Ernest, you don't think he will, after he's sworn that I'm the only woman in the world he could ever have loved? He thinks me much better looking than Monty. He says she hasn't got a soul yet. He doubts if she will ever have one." I didn't doubt it. I thought I had heard it stirring in the throes of birth, a soul such as would blind the eyes of a Rachel Guest, with its white shining. Monty had said that she would find her soul in Egypt, but the mention of this was not indicated just then. "I haven't the courage to tell him, even if there were really anything definite to tell," Rachel went on. "It would be insulting a man like Willis to suggest that he'd been influenced. You know what I mean. But now we're talking of it, do advise me. We're planning to be married in Egypt at the end of this trip, and then settle down in Cairo for Mr. Bailey's studies at the museum. He came up the Nile only for me, you see. And he says I shall be his first model for the new style. My eyes are just right, as if they'd been made on purpose to help him. I lie awake nights wondering what if, before the wedding, when he finds out for certain that my name is really only Rachel Guest, and that I daren't think of it. Then, if you want me to advise, why don't you in some tactful, perhaps joking way speak of the story Bedr started, and I can't, I simply can't. Yet you feel it would be better?" "Yes, sometimes I feel it. You help me, Lord Ernest. You tell him. And then, see if you see any signs. You'll make him understand how dreadful it would be to throw me over, because I'm poor, and have been a nobody till now." "I'll do my best," I heard myself weakly promising. No wonder I have earned the nickname of Duffer. Chapter 25